Before recorded history, before there was Mundus, and before the creation of life itself, the Et Ada existed. Created by two first gods, Anu, the first serpent, and Padme, this Et Ada were essentially the makers of everything. Bearing in mind that this is an extremely watered down explanation for the creation of life, we can say that Lorkand, the second serpent, actually tricked his fellow spirits into making a realm of existence which would come to be known as Mundus. Within Mundus is the plains of the Aedra, Nirn, and its moons. The Et Ada that Lorkand managed to trick lost a great deal of their strength, and were then turned into the Aedra we are familiar with in game. Those that Lorkand couldn't fool, or who escaped from his trickery, became one with the plains of oblivion, and are known as Daedra. The earlier races of Elves, the Altmer, worshipped the Aedra Trinimac as their god. Trinimac was known to be the strongest of the Aedra, personal knight of Auriel in the Elven culture, and the demise of Lorkand. The legends say that Trinimac struck Lorkand down in front of his army and ripped his heart from his chest. While the heart couldn't be destroyed, Auriel tied it to an arrow and sent it flying, forever dooming the heart to float in the sea. This, of course, was a mistake which would later have a dramatic impact on a certain group of elves. Now, Trinimac was successful and revered by the mortal elves for his power. In the true nature of a Daedric goth, Boethia, the Daedric prince of treachery, wanted that power. Taking the form and voice of Trinimac, Boethia managed to fool the group of elves into believing that the Aedra weren't actually worth worshipping, and that they should instead worship the Daedric gods. These elves accepted this and became known as the Chimmer, or the Changed Ones. There's a lot of cool information behind the Chimmer too, but we can save that for another video. The point is that while a small group of elves broke off from the worship of Trinimac, the majority of the population still perceived him to be the chief god. However, the loss of followers angered Trinimac, and he aimed to stop the exodus by confronting Boethia. Here's where things get messed up, guys. Stick with me. Trinimac was unable to defeat the Daedric prince, and their battle was cut short when Boethia ate Trinimac. Let that sink in there for a second. Boethia ate an Aedric god. Not only did he eat them, but he corrupted his body and turned him evil. Trinimac was turned into the Daedric prince Malacath, the keeper of the Sworn Oath and Bloody Curse. That isn't all either. Trinimac's previous followers were also transformed. Their elven appearances were forever distorted into a large, brutish green-skinned beast. They became the Orcimer, the Orcish race. Now, how's that for a backstory? The Orcs are one of the most talented warrior races in the Elder Scroll universe. Their god was transformed, and thus, so were they. And most Orcs still worship the Daedric prince that Trinimac became. Though the existence of the race is purely a divine blunder, the Orcimer have since become a thriving cultural society, with all the complexities present in the other 9 Tamrielic races. In the beginning, the Orcimer, known as the Pariah folk, or outcasts, inhabited tiny villages and ratty huts. However, it didn't take long before they established their own dwelling. Led by the warlord Thulgag, the Orcs and Goblins of Hammerfell made way into the Hrothgarian mountains in High Rock. Their chieftain, Toruk Growy Graham, officially claimed ownership of these lands, and thus, their established territory became known as Orsinium. Nestled within the mountain range, the society was first just a small cluster of huts. The other races believed the place to be primitive and savage, a place without law and order. The Bretons of High Rock specifically tell tales of pillage and meager existences, as the Orcs apparently relied on trade with their Breton neighbors. Of course, the Orcs have a different idea of how the ordeal went over. The point is that eventually word and success spread, and the Orcs created a civilization to be both respected and feared. It was fear that marked the first of many Orcish hardships. As their society grew in number and size, the Redguard and Breton countries formed an alliance to strike them down. They feared that the Orcs would rise against them, and thus they had to be taken down. The Great Siege of Orsinium forced the inhabitants to scatter, beaten back through clever battle strategy by the Bretons. The Orcs' numbers dwindled, and every attempt to reestablish their territory was quickly thwarted. It seemed all hope for the Orcs was lost, but of course, this is the Elder Scrolls series and nobody goes down without a fight. An Orc visionary by the name of Gordwug Grodnagorm managed to win back the Orsinium lands in a duel with a Breton lord. Now, Gordwug was sort of a badass back in his day. Not only did he best a lord in combat, therefore winning back his ancestors' home, he also became the first of the Orcimer and ultimately earned the respect of the other races for all of Orc kind. And how did he do it? Well, chill out for a second, I'll tell you. Gordwug was an intelligent orc with a talent for all things political. Obviously, once he won over the ownership of Orsinium, his people named him king of the place, but his greatness didn't stop there. He managed, through traded information, to find and wield one of the 7 totems of Tiber Septim, which would control Numidium. Yeah, that Numidium. The giant brass golem from the prophecy, that thing. Through his possession of the totem, the other races came to respect him and subsequently, the entire race. Gordwog is the sole reason as to why orcs are actually treated as imperial citizens and can live relatively civil among the other races. Of course, some orcs prefer to live a more secluded lifestyle, away from the rest of society, in strongholds. We see a few examples of the structures in Skyrim. Tall walls, oddly shaped buildings, smelteries, and of course, a lot of orcs. Each stronghold lives a very specific set of rules which inhabitants must live by. Chiefs are chosen through combat. Every orc has a designated job, and every orc is trained to defend the stronghold. It is a very violence-oriented society, yet they live very peacefully. Within the safety of their walls, the orcs are free to practice their religion. As mentioned before, the orcs worship Malacath and follow the code of Malacath, which is both a set of religious guidelines and a code of law. Don't kill, don't steal, and don't attack people without reason. What's interesting, however, is that Gordwog Gronagram, remember the guy we talked about a minute ago, the leader of Orsinium, he actually believes Malacath to be a fake god. He instead believes that the Aedric god Trinimac still lives, and was not in fact eaten by Boethia. If this were indeed true, then where could have the orcs come from? Well, that's an interesting question. Their chieftain, Toruk Groi Graham, officially claimed ownership of these lands, and thus, their established territory became known as damn it, fuck. Okay, one last time. This is it, guys. This is Ashley. This is it.